On a cold, gray December afternoon, Don Reapy is out on the water. This is what he's fighting to protect. Don is the Jacques Cousteau of Jamaica Bay. He's worked to protect species and ecosystems on this edge of New York for decades. He says protecting coastal ecosystems like the salt marshes of Jamaica Bay is essential to fighting against and educating young people about climate change. Jamaica Bay is a wetland estuary surrounded by the Rockaway Peninsula to the south, Brooklyn to the west, and Queens to the east. Almost the size of Manhattan, the bay is a biodiversity hotspot with over 325 bird species. The salt marshes provide habitat for the birds, as well as for the prey and grasses they feed on. They're integral to this region's survival, but they might not be around much longer.
This is what New York City could look like over the course of the next 2,000 years.
Local sea rise has risen by about 30 centimeters in New York City, and scientists say over half of this is due to global warming. Combined with rising temperatures and human stresses, this has been destructive to local habitats. Recent conservation efforts, like the shoreline restoration and marine debris removal projects, have improved the conditions of the marshes. But this valuable ecosystem is still disappearing at an alarming rate.
Even if it's external to this, going out and
As Jamaica Bay Guardian for the American Littoral Society, Don is fighting to save the bay and the species who live here, especially the birds.
Oh, sorry. That's a mallard duck, by the way. Can I cut off for a minute? Unfortunately, a former teacher, I always felt that we lacked the, teaching kids early on about ecology and nature, to learn to appreciate and love and realize that we're a big part of it.
At a climate march in Midtown Manhattan, young people are more aware than ever of the effects of climate change. They see it happening right here at home.
I spend my days working with young people and I hear so many different things. And one of the things that I hear is fear. We are trying to speed this up as there's rain coming down, and even I'm getting a little bit anxious right now because just a few months ago, Hurricane Ida hit and we lost 13 of our community members unnecessarily. 13 of our community members died because our city and state was not ready for their rain. How many lives can we lose before we take action? Thank you.
The question for many of these teenagers is how to translate their climate anxiety into hope and change. How can they get involved? At the High School for Climate Justice in East Harlem, one educator says it's by seeing conservation projects in action.
They went to Coney Island Creek with our staff and some of our students, and one of their kind of experiences there was to get into the water. They put on waders, walked into shallow water with nets, and they did a netting kind of experiment where they were able to kind of take in a little bit of aquatic life. But what they found, as they thought some of the aquatic life was so cute, was they also saw trash and plastics. And so they made that connection through visual, through doing, through that field trip. And they came back to the school just beaming, kind of understanding a little bit more what they were learning in class, and also with empathy.
Another opportunity for New York City high schoolers is at the Wildlife Conservation Society. Headquartered at the Bronx Zoo, this global organization wants to help build the city's next generation of science leaders.
One of the things that we've been working on and that we just launched this year is a science internship program, a paid science internship program, where we have been leading the effort to really help create that next generation of science leaders in the city of New York. When all is said and done, we're hoping to have approximately 1,000 paid science internships for communities that have been historically underserved in the city of New York.
Back at Jamaica Bay, Don watches the sunset from his boat, the Oyster Catcher. You can almost forget you're in New York until you see the Manhattan skyline in the background, or hear the sound of the subway or an airplane. The view is postcard worthy, an ecosystem trying to survive in an urban metropolis, despite all odds. Don is hopeful that more young New Yorkers are learning about local ecosystems and getting involved in the fight against climate change. but he says the clock is ticking.
There's great concern, but we move in slow progress. We have to have debates and meetings. Nature doesn't take any break. Nature does not sleep. It's constantly moving. What it wants to do, it's going to do. And if we want to work with it, we have to work faster.